we start with a question that maybe can be, from your point of view, like a drug developer. So there has been quite a lot of progress. We see now maybe some beep, finally, that we could see that something could be maybe around the corner for the patient, maybe something is happening, but there are still a lot of challenges. So what are the key challenges that still remain for a successful development of a treatment for dementia? And also looking at what the portfolio that you have, your babies, where do you think they can help as a first step, and what should come next?
Yeah, so in terms of getting to where we need to get as a society, i.e. really have cures for these neurodegenerative diseases, I think one of the key next things we need to do is to start thinking, well, there will never be a silver bullet. These are complex diseases. How do we do rational combination treatment from the beginning? It's often said that we are at a point where oncology was 10, 15 years ago. There is no single drug regimen in oncology, really. And that is because you have to attack the disease at several levels. So I think that's going to be a big nut to crack for us collectively, is how do we do this in such a way that it's not sequential? We do intervention A, intervention B, and then we find out whether A plus B is better. With neurodegeneration, duration of this disease, we just don't have that luxury. And I think that's where the biomarkers, better animal models should help us. So if I then think about what have we built, we've built an interesting portfolio now of potential new targets, TREM2, CD33, ApoE4. As we are thinking about translating these targets and what they could do, can we start thinking, what if we combine them early on? And how do we have animal models that could give us readouts? And then how do we design, and this is where I have to work with regulators, the right trial paradigms? So I think that's the real next big thing. I won't comment on aducanumab's data per se, but I think it is just an expression of how this field is evolving and trying to come together to find the next what could really be impactful for patients. And I've always said in neurodegeneration, regulators have never been the bottleneck. They have been really trying to be open-minded. It's us, scientists, etc., that have to give them the data that allows them to make the right decision. I'm not going in the argument whether this is the right decision today or not, but at least it put Alzheimer's on the map globally again. And I think in several environments, people will start looking differently at this. And this is maybe indeed the inflection point where oncology was 10, 15 years ago, with the more specific treatments to say, hey, we can really do something here. It's where MS was in the early 90s. So I hope that that's at least an outcome of that.
Thank you very much, Luke. We all, I think, hope for you. And actually, there are some interesting ideas that would be nice that maybe a NeuroNet bring back to the project and see what they think. And then what come next, maybe, who knows, for some other project in the future under the new partnership, or maybe some other partnership. We will see. But I would like now to, we have a question for Helen. And so you talk for the people of dementia in general, how it was to participate in the project, but there are someone that would like to know really for you as a person, individual, what was like to participate in a research project as an expert by experience? And did you feel that what you needed, what are important for you was considered? What is your personal experience? You have to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you, please. I think Helen needs some help to unmute herself. Rui, can you do something, please? bit on our side. Unfortunately, look like we cannot unmute you.
Helen, can you look where you have the chat and there is a little micro? It has to be on green for you able to speak. Helen, we cannot hear you. You need to go to the chat where you have the chat and the little micro needs to be on green. Can you speak now?
Maybe we can leave Helen to find this, and maybe in the meantime, I will ask another question to look. So I think you already talked about where you see the value of the IMI, what could be, but can you say something about, do you think it was useful, or do you have any anecdote of the fact that it helped internally? Do you know anything or anything that you can say where something that was done in an IMI project could be used directly in your day-to-day business, of course, without any confidential?
Well, I think let's go back to the core principles of why IMI came to be. And without actually even running a project, the fact that you brought these parties together, the dialogues had, the relationships built in those sometimes very long meetings in Brussels, at least for me, falling off an airplane, that alone enriched what we were doing. It formed personal relationship between people around this call. It formed personal relationship between people in different companies, that then it was much easier to pick up a phone and talk about an idea in another part of the world. I mean, that alone, let's not forget, bringing people together has value in and of itself. And I think maybe that was one of the insights the European Commission had was, hey, we can't always put hard numbers on it, although I'm sure, given the way we had to collect our time expenditure, they really wanted to see some numbers at the end. But I think just the community that was created here is really already powerful. And as you can see, several of those things we were doing, like the idea around EPAD, was mimicked in the Global Alzheimer's Platform, right? Funded in part by NIH and companies, but then in North America. So mimicry is a great flattery, right? And so I think that's, I mean, I don't make it any more difficult than that.
Luke, can I make a comment as well, Elizabeth? I think.
Yeah. Can we just a moment? Sorry, can I give you the word just a moment? I'm conscious of Helen. Maybe she forgot. If we have to repeat, or you have it, can you do it briefly, and then we go back to Helen.
Thank you.
So, Helen, would you like to answer?
Yes, of course.
The question, or?
Yeah, no, thank you. I have the question. Sorry, I'm not sure what button I hit. It's important to have our voices heard, and we feel it's a value to IMI. We can make an impact and we can provide value to your research. So to that question, I think it's really important that we are involved and that we can make our contribution and make to whomever, and it makes research so much easier when we can engage with researchers.
Thank you, Helen. And then I think Jill, you want to also contribute to what Luke was
I just
saying?
wanted to come back to what Luke was saying in terms of the value of these partnerships. When I started in this work in amyloid imaging 15 years ago, we were very much doing individual investigator-led studies with, individual physicians who had individual questions, who would recruit 20 or 30 subjects. So you had a multitude of very, very small studies, each with 20, 30, 40 subjects. I think what we're doing now is the power of actually generating data with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 data points and we're now working on relevant. So, you know, we've worked with the FBA partners, with the pharma partners, the diagnostic partners, but also the academic partners, to actually ask the relevant scientific questions where the data that is generated is not in the form of these bespoke small studies, but in powerful large data sets that offer more opportunity, I think, to tease out patterns and understand the real causes of the disease and the real impact of how, you know, cognitive decline might be initiated by a biomarker sequence or whatever. So for me, that's the benefit of working with people like Luke's company and also the academic partners. So
thank you, Jill. A very, very quick question to Luke, then, since I know we have to leave. Thank you, Luke, very much. If you can be quick, because it's a big question. What do you think? Can you comment something on the value and challenges of wearables? Since everybody talk about wearable, using wearable, but
yeah, so, no, I mean, it's such an obvious thing to think about because we all carry a phone, smartwatch, whatever. So it's an easy thing to think about. The implementation of it to a standard that regulators expect to be included in their decision making is a whole other ball game. And so we shouldn't underestimate that. And that's why I'm looking forward to the outcome of radar to see, you know, how can we tighten up that picture around what they can tell us and what they can tell us. I think the recent kind of negative advice on the Verily instruments by the FDA still talked about, well, you know, you can measure finger tapping on a phone, but we don't know how relevant that is for the patient. As I thought about that, it was, why don't we think about typing speed, not finger tapping, but typing speed as the next one. So to me, it's like an incremental learning stage, but it's an obvious thing to move into because it's so ubiquitous. But the other things that need to be thought about is, you know, well, what about privacy? Where do we set the threshold between, you know, continuous sampling, which could give us a high resolution signal, and privacy? And I think that is definitely not something I can solve in the next minute. I really have to go, but I really thank you for the invite, Elisabetta, for everybody's collaboration over the years that we've been working in the NDSGG. I think the impact of this will be clear in years to come. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Luke, for your availability. You know, you're extremely busy schedule. So, and early in the morning. So since, as everybody should know, Luke is joining us from US, of course. And have a good day, and thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so we will continue, and actually we have also a question for the other speaker. So actually now I have a question that I will just try to read. And this could be, well, it was both to Luke and Carlos. So Carlos, if you can understand, I'm trying to understand what the person that asked really wanted. But she's asked, would you think that there will be master regulators to control pathway? And also, can we talk of existing overlapping dementia pathway? So I guess maybe the question was coming back to the fact, if you look at combination treatment and we look at linking, combination, and then maybe like TREM, and then we have ApoE. Maybe Olivier, you can also comment maybe here, because maybe it's more a scientific question. So I guess the question is, should we talk about overlap, about dementia pathway? Should we talk about master regulator that should be maybe targeted with a bit more sense in a scientific? So this is a really scientific question, I would think. And apologies, I hope I understood right what the person that asked wanted to hear. So I don't know, maybe it's more for Olivier than Carlos, I would think.
Okay, thank you for this question. Of course, the really important question, as Luke stressed a few minutes ago. And the question is, we have several pathways, and you know, the comparison with cancer, I think, was very sounded. But first, I would say possibly we are too enthusiastic, or we put the bar too high. If you do the same analogy with cancer, there are several pathways. Now there are drug combination, and there are some incremental progresses. In neurosciences, we have been used to wait for the magic bullet, but possibly it does not exist. And for AD, we have several targets. We have inflammation, we have tau, we have amyloid target, we have many others we possibly don't know yet. What we learned is that there are clearly some interaction. And I think we need to decipher, and we will come back later to that with the nosology, the link between the phenotypes and the genotypes and the biomarkers in order to put together some ideas for individualized medicine. As we have seen from Jill results, there is no one single patient. We cannot mix all patients thinking that there is only one disease. There are several diseases, there are several stages, and possibly the treatment will not be the same according to the stage of the disease we are facing and addressing. So I think this possibly is the next step. It was like in psychiatry. First, many drugs focused on one pathway, and after that, tried to target many pathways at the same time because, of course, there is a balance and interaction within the brain. So I don't know if it's a clear answer or not. Possibly, Carlos, you can also comment on that.
No, I would just say, Olivier, to complement your answer, I think that one thing that is important as well is that we have to realize the failures that we've experienced over the past couple of decades. So one of the things that I think IMI has been very productive at is to, as Luke said, put together a number of stakeholders. The wealth of research capacity is astonishing when you actually see it all integrated. So one of the things that we're trying to promote as well in NeuroNet is some radical thinking as well. Maybe there's new hypotheses that have to come up with. Maybe there's a different way of thinking about these diseases that needs to be promoted. And I think that space between projects, so we avoid a little bit the conservative approach, in which everyone follows the same hypothesis more or less, and everyone is actually a little bit scared of breaking ranks, and actually come up with some radical thinking and come up with some fresh ideas that can really represent the breakthrough. And I think that is where NeuroNet is actually operating, at the cracks, if you like, between projects. And I think that may yield actually, if supported, that may yield really ice-breaking results, I think, just as an add-on.
Thank you, Carlos. And now I would like to follow with a question for Rachel, and then a question for Jill, and then another one for Ellen. So Rachel, so you have given with IBISC2 an excellent example of sustainability that worked. So what do you think was important factors for sustainability, and which advice you can give to other projects that would like to be successful in sustaining their asset?
Mm-hmm. I mean, for IBISC, I really think one of the critical aspects has been the collaborative nature of it. We have a group of partners that have now worked together very, very closely since 2014. So we really have partners that are very communicative. We really discuss very well, and because of that, it means that you can really identify issues very early on. You find a resolution, and you can implement it. Additionally, we're quite collaborative with the kind of wider scientific area. So, it means that on a scientific basis, we can really keep up to speed with what the new issues are, what the new areas of interest are, what the new targets are, but also just really understand what their needs and demands are, which in terms of sustainability for IBISC is really, really critical, so that we can plan ahead for what will be needed 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the line. For other research projects, I would really plan, I say maybe the less exciting scientific aspects right from the start. So plan things like the ethical aspects, the legal aspects. Really plan from the beginning what assets you're going to generate and how you're going to make them sustainable after the project finishes. Because only by doing that really from the project start can you avoid issues later on down the road. And I think now, you know, with resources like the NeuroNet Asset Map and eBISC and others, there is so many resources available to be able to make different assets available, whether it's a physical asset like a cell line or whether it's a data set. There's so many ways now to be able to make those assets sustainable long term that it's just a case of really planning for it right from the beginning.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And so let's hope that there are a lot of projects to listen. And Jill, we received a couple of questions around the same aspect, that was the consideration of sex and gender in research. And I think Rachel already showed that this is considered. But what do you think, what has been done in AMIPAD? Of course, you consider this in the selection of patient, and why do you think also that it is important, this consideration of sex and gender as an important variable? And is there anything more that should be done and that has not been done?
Thanks, Elisabetta. That's a really relevant question. I showed you some of the data on the amyloid positivity rate in the results when I went through those slides, and actually we did look back, and there is actually a slight bias towards amyloid positivity in females relative to males in the clinical group. So I think the consideration of sex-based differences is absolutely critical, because we know that, for example, there is a slight bias towards women going for Alzheimer's disease and men potentially getting vascular dementia, for example. So we will consider sex-based differences as an important variable in the statistical analysis plan for both the diagnostic study and the prognostic study, because obviously there are key things that we need to understand with respect to why is it that there is a slight increase in amyloid deposition in females relative to males. So it's a great question, Elisabetta, and we will make sure that that is a key part of our statistical analysis plan for both studies that we are working on.
Thank you very much, Jill. And I have another question for Helen. And the question is, again, what are the biggest challenges in your daily life?
Thanks, Elizabeth. The biggest challenge in my daily life is my short-term memory. It's very difficult to live with. I'm told something and then it's forgotten. It takes a lot to keep focused and safe every day. I have a diary, I have a whiteboard, I have Alexa, I have an iPhone, I have an iPad, I have a computer, I wear a smartwatch, and I also have a safety bracelet. And it's amazing, but I'm afraid to tell you that I need all of them to keep me going. Sometimes I forget about a meeting, but thanks to Alzheimer's Europe or the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, one of the great things that Alzheimer's Europe did, which has really helped us, that we always receive things on email, and then they set up some WhatsApp groups. And the WhatsApp groups have been absolutely tremendous for me, because they really, I know that I won't forget, that I'm going to get that reminder of the time. Like today, Anna kept me informed, and Diane, and you know, we can't do things on our own. We have to have help and we have to have support. So in our research, it's great to know that we have a team behind us, and that, you know, my short-term memory is helped. You know, I'm being helped all along the way.
Thank you, Helen. I can only say you are amazing and really fantastic. And gosh, how can you manage with all these different apps and all? I don't know for myself. I have to try and look for my phone. I don't know how much time I spent on that, and hopefully I still not have Alzheimer, but also any other. So you are amazing. You are just an amazing lady. Thank you for being here with us. And I will have now, we have still a little bit of time, I think, for a question. So I have one more question for Carlos. And actually, there were a few, so we will have to take one that is about actually, do you have some metrics on the use of the resources that you already generated? Can you already say something now that you have, for example, the asset map and how, if anybody is looking at this, because unfortunately you are in a world there is so much out there, and then to find the information is the first thing.
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised to see the numbers. So in the knowledge base, of course, we're keeping track of how many deliverables, publications, etc., resulting from the portfolio as a whole. So I just scribbled some notes. So we have, something like 500 publications, 400 public deliverables that are accessible from the knowledge base. There's something like 90 assets already, 260 organizations, something like that, representing 25 countries. So those are stats that are only updated when a new project comes in and a project evolves and starts generating assets. In terms of accesses to the knowledge base, of course, the knowledge base was published or open to the public recently, just on February, so we're kind of ramping up. But the fellows at Alzheimer's Europe told me that we have like 1,000 unique users. Interestingly, people are spending a lot of time for the average time that can be expected, so over 5 minutes on the site. So people are really digging in the information, etc. And for the asset map, we also have over 1,000 page views so far, etc. So we're keeping track of the metrics in terms of access to the resources. One thing we want to do in the next phase of NeuroNet is actually help projects to also assess the impact of their own assets, which just tracking at the portfolio level. But I think one thing interesting would be to help projects to actually, some of them are already doing that, but some of them not really. So try to see how we can help them leverage their assets, exploit them better, make them more accessible, and also be able to calibrate their impact in the community better as well. So we're keeping an eye on it, and that's the information I can give you now.
Thank you, Carlos. I have a question for Jill. It's a little bit of a philosophical question maybe, but it is about what can be done today thanks to the work and the output of AMIPAD that was not possible before AMIPAD. So what if AMIPAD had never been done? What would be the difference?
What's coming out of AMIPAD? I do think that the fact that we've been working with 2 tracers in AMIPAD, so we're in this non-competitive environment in terms of understanding sort of cross-tracer performance is very important. So, for example, a lot of the cohorts, a lot of the pharmaceutical studies, a lot of the future use of amyloid PET is probably going to involve multiple tracers. And I think it's important for the dementia field to understand how these measures are made independent of the use of the tracers. So that I think we've had to have a very non-GE hat on and a non-GE life hat on. We're basically working on the methodology rather than the tracer, if that makes sense, because of the non-competitive nature of working in an FPA IMI project. So for me, the fact that we've been able to work with Janssen, the pharma partner, we've been working with our academic partners, it's a sort of tracer independent examination of the performance of amyloid imaging. I think that's what comes out of AMIPAD, for my mind, for my thinking.
Yes, thank you, Jill.
Does that answer your question, or is there more that I could tease out? Yeah.
So definitely the fact that indeed this knowledge that is go away from the proprietary knowledge, but is something that really then can be used for the community for the future. and that will really help to do better trial, in short. That if you were not collaborating with Janssen, collaborating with another imaging company, so in this cross-sectorial collaboration, and then of course with academic, with the input with the regulators, that with of course the input with the patient, all this would not have happened, and we will still be
I mean,
without all this knowledge.
We did some scientific advice, and EMEA had never had so we basically approached the European authorities for some scientific advice twice, and we actually went as a consortium, and that had never happened in EMEA. We're a bit perplexed to how to deal with us, and we actually, our Synapse colleagues helped us along the way, and we actually went to the European Medicines Agency as a consortium rather than as a single pharma company, which was quite unusual for them. So they gave us very generic advice which could be applied. So that was one example I think that we worked on in AMIPAD, was this joint scientific advice rather than company specific scientific advice, this regulatory interaction.
Thank you very much, Jill. And I think we are at the end of our question, but so I would like, we have still a few questions, but we will keep only one to ask now because of the time. And Helen, if you don't mind, we would like to take one like question of the one that come for you. And this is again, if you had an ideal treatment available, could be an app, could be a drug, but the combination, we talk about many different possibilities, but if you had it available and you could choose this treatment to have it, what would you like it to be?
Well, obviously a pill that I could take rather quickly that has no side effects. That's one of the biggest dreads of all the research we do. For some of you that have worked with us, you will know that side effects are something that's important to us. An app or a device would be ideal, easy to use, and can bring benefits to us. I think that is one of the I suppose that's one of the things we need, but also I would also like to add to that you know, we need to support that with our social health. You know, our social health is really important. So when we talk about an ideal treatment, we really need to start bringing our social health into this as well. Because, for example, for me, I love to listen to music and do puzzles and brain exercises, but there's nothing more important than having the ideal treatment with laughter and enjoyment. And you probably all know that Irish people love fun and laughter, and meeting up with friends is really important. So it's important that whilst we have the drug or whilst we have the app, that we also have happiness in our lives, because that can have a huge impact on our lives. So for me, it's important that we have both, that we just have, it's not an isolation about having that pill or having that app. And I suppose I would just finish by saying on that, you know, a famous Martin Luther King quote, you know, if we can't fly, then run. If we can't run, then walk. And if we can't walk, crawl. But whatever we're doing, we have to keep moving forward. And I think that's one of the great things about today for me, is that we're all moving forward together. So tomorrow I will put on the lipstick and I'll enjoy my life, and I look back on today with gratitude.
Thank you so much, Helen. And I think this was a great end to the question and answer session.